to Self-Paced Ukulele. This lesson will teach you how to read notes on the staff and where to play them on the ukulele. Let's get started. In Lesson 2, you were introduced to the staff and its components. Then, in Lesson 3, you were introduced to the symbols used to represent different rhythmic durations, such as whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, and so on. These symbols, called notes, can also be placed on the staff, and when done so, they represent specific pitches. So, notes that are written on the staff show both pitch and duration. Once you can interpret these symbols and know where they are found on your instrument, you will be reading music. Learning to read music begins with memorizing the letters we use to notate it. This part is very easy because music notation uses only the first 7 letters of the alphabet: A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. These note letters have designated locations on a grid we call the staff. The staff is organized through the use of lines and spaces. In treble clef, a note placed on the bottom line of the staff represents the pitch E. And in fact, a note of any durational value will always be called E when written on this line. Placing a note in the space immediately above E denotes the pitch F. The next line up is G, and after G, in the following space, the alphabetical sequence begins again on A. The sequence continues moving forward and up in a line space pattern until the top space of the staff is reached on the pitch G. At that point, to continue going higher, ledger lines are used to extend the range of the staff. A note placed on the first ledger line above the staff denotes the pitch A. The space above that is B. A note placed on the second ledger line above the staff denotes the pitch C, and so on. Ledger lines can also be used to notate pitches that are below the range of the staff's 5 lines. Since the lowest space of the staff denotes the pitch D, to go one note lower, to C, a ledger line is added. Then, the space below C denotes the pitch B, and so on. A standard ukulele doesn't go lower than the third string, C, placed on the first ledger line below the staff. However, ukuleles that are strung with the low G can go lower, and to notate those pitches, a second ledger line must be used to extend the staff down to G. Understanding how the staff is organized means you only need to memorize a single note, and then you can deduce any other note. For example, if you memorize the note C on the first ledger line below the staff, and let's say you need to figure out what note is on the very top space of the staff. To do this, you can just go straight forward through the alphabet as you ascend line space on the staff. This can take some time at first, but eventually the other notes start to stick and you'll have more reference points. Of course, there are some tried and true tricks that can help. For example, the spaces on the staff that are between its lines spell face. Listen to the alliteration of space, face. The lines of the staff from bottom to top are E, G, B, D, and F. A common saying that is used to help remember these lines is, "Every good boy deserves fudge." Too corny? Try creating a saying of your own. The staff is great at providing a visually representative grid where notes that sound higher in pitch are placed higher up, and notes that sound lower in pitch are placed lower down. But there's one more tool you'll need to learn to know where these notes are placed on the fretboard. That tool is the legend. I call it this because, like a map legend, it shows distances. For our purposes, the distances being measured are found between notes. The legend does this by showing the naturally occurring locations of half steps and whole steps as they appear in our alphabetical sequence of note letters. This is something that the staff does not show and must be remembered in order to place notes on the fretboard. Notice that there are dots between some letters, but there are no dots between the notes B and C, or E and F. Also, notice the A in parentheses at the far right. This is to show that the sequence begins again on A, following the dot placed after G. In theory, the sequence repeats infinitely in either direction. Fortunately, you won't have to worry about that because the ukulele has a finite number of frets. But it is important to remember that the sequence repeats as many times as needed to accommodate your instrument. Every increment in the legend represents the distance of 1/2 step. For example, A to the dot following it is the distance of 1/2 step. That dot to B is also the distance of 1/2 step. B to C is another half step because there is no dot between these two letters. Therefore, any two letters that have a dot between them are said to be 1 whole step apart, and the letters that don't are said to be a half step apart. The legend can be especially useful when placing notes on the fretboard. For example, each fret space to its adjacent fret space is the distance of 1/2 step. This includes open strings to fret space 1. So if you started on open string 3, called C, you would have to move to fret 2 on that string to play the note D. You can see on the legend, starting with C as 0, representing the open string, the dot represents fret 1, and D represents fret 2. Notice, however, if you started on open string 2, called E, you only have to move to fret 1 to find the note F. This is because E and F are only 1/2 step, or 1 fret space apart, as there is no dot between them on the legend. In fact, any E to any F immediately above it on the same string will always equal the distance of 1 fret space. And any C to any D immediately above it on the same string will always equal the distance of 2 fret spaces. By learning the natural order of note distances shown in the legend, you can deduce any note's placement on any string by counting forward or backwards 1 fret at a time, as long as you know 1 note to start with. There's one more layer to understanding the legend that needs to be explained: the dots. So far, they've been used only as markers, but they have proper note names as well. In fact, each dot has 2 proper note names, one a sharp name and one a flat. Take, for example, A sharp and B flat. They share the same dot between A and B, and thus share the same fret space on the fingerboard. A sharp and B flat are said to be enharmonically equivalent. In other words, they are spelled differently, but sound exactly the same. This term is used for each dot's dual spelling. Since these different spellings share the same dot on the legend, they will also share the same fret space on the ukulele. For now, don't worry too much about why there are 2 different spellings. You'll learn how to use them properly in a later lesson when you learn about keys and key signatures. Until then, you only need to know of their existence and how they play out on the fretboard. A sharp will always raise the pitch by 1/2 step, or 1 fret. A flat will always lower the pitch by 1/2 step, which also equates to 1 fret. Listen and watch how the notes ascend through the legend 1 fret at a time, starting on the open 3rd string. For this, we will use sharps wherever a dot occurs in the sequence. Once we get to C on string 1, we can descend through the legend, this time using flats. Listen and watch again how this plays out. In conclusion, understanding how the staff is organized and understanding how the natural order of notes are organized via half steps and whole steps, you'll be able to find any note on the ukulele. Of course, the missing element in getting good at reading is practice, practice, and more practice. I strongly recommend that you begin with reading single-line melodies. After a few dozen tunes, the notes will begin to stick, and once they do, you'll be ready to tackle more complicated arrangements of notes, such as chords and multi-voice textures. To help get you started, the next lesson will address keys and key signatures. Thanks for watching. Please be sure to subscribe and give a like to the video if you found it useful. Cheers!